Welcome back to the FrankenCast. It's our second episode. The FrankenCast is a podcast that looks at Manhattan College and all its various parts. Today we have a bunch of guests, so let's get right to them. Welcome to the FrankenCast. Our first segment is called Multicultural Stories. We look at people's journeys and how their identities have shaped the persons that they have become and influenced their decision to come to Manhattan College. Once here, we look at what has happened in the time that they've been here that has shaped their identities or how they've used their identities to shape the world around them. Enjoy. So today we have Chris here with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about talk with him a little bit about how he grew up and what his story is. Hey, Chris.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm doing well.
So, Chris, tell us a little bit about tell us your name, where you grew up, a little bit about what your experience was like when you grew up.
So my name is Christopher Santiago. I grew up in the Bronx, but then I moved to Yonkers, over there like by Kingsbridge on the 4 train. And when I was growing up, the only thing I really knew was, like, Dominican. And then when I would go other places, people would, like, not see me as Dominican or, like, you're too dark or you don't speak enough Spanish. But to me, it was just, like, I was Dominican and that was it.
But you are Dominican.
Yeah,
okay.
I am. I am Dominican. But that's, like, the culture I knew. That's what I grew up as. And I just thought, like, that was me. And that's it. And then first school I went to was here in the Heights. And there was, like, me. There were Caucasian people. There were, like, all different races. And I never really thought much of them. I was just like, oh, like, cool, this person is this and this person is that. But at home, it was a Catholic school, so I was just grew up being Catholic. So that's, like, the two things I knew.
So you said you moved to Yonkers.
Yeah.
Right? So was it when you went to Yonkers that people questioned whether or not you were Dominican? Or was it just everywhere?
No, it's everywhere. Like, every time I go someplace new, no one really says anything. They just assume my race. And then if I say anything in Spanish, they're like, oh, like, where are you from?
Okay, where'd you learn Spanish?
Yeah. And so even other Dominican people, it's everywhere.
And it's interesting because we live in New York City, and what you're describing is very common in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And if you know anything about the Dominican race and a lot of Latino cultures in New York, there are people who present as European and Dominican, people who present as closer to African in the Dominican culture, and so it's a wide variance.
There's some people who look Asian.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And this is all within families. Like even in your one family, it can.
My aunt is way lighter than me. We're not even close to the same shade.
Did that ever play into, or did you perceive that to play into your access to things, or the way that you interacted with the world, or was it just a fact? It's like, okay, there are some people who are lighter than me, there are people that are darker than me, or did you ever feel like there was things that you weren't allowed to do because of your dark skin?
I wouldn't think about it like that. It was more of like a fact, because my aunt was like so much lighter than me, and then my cousin was like nowhere near me and my aunt. So I was just like, oh, like we're all like the same. It's like just DR. But there was a time I was in elementary school, and it was a Catholic school, so we would always do like plays about Christmas and like Jesus making the journey. And I always wanted to be Joseph, but I wanted to be it, but I would never say it. And then I told my mom about it. We went to talk to the teacher, and she was like, oh, he didn't raise his hand. And then I was like, oh, I didn't think Joseph could be someone who was my skin complexion.
I see.
So that was the only time it like played a role. I'm like, oh, already what society, I guess, already has in place. I was like, I guess that's not for me. Like, I can't fill that role.
Right. The imagery that you saw in the church, with all the Josephs were light skinned, right?
Yeah. So I was like, I guess I can't play that role.
Right. That's very interesting. Interesting. So we've talked about your race and your ethnicity and to a certain extent nationality. Were there any other identities that played a part in your development?
Like at home?
Or anywhere.
When I was growing up, since my family came from DR, it was very like learn English, because we're already here, and they were like, you need to know English because we're here. And then is when, like, first it was Spanish, then it was, like, English hardcore for school. And then I started getting back into Spanish. So sometimes I have a little bit of an accent to people who speak Spanish, since I don't speak it as perfectly or, like, as correctly as they do. So if I go to the Dominican community, it's like they're like, oh, like you're not Dominican enough.
Right.
And then people see me as African American or black. So then when I go to the black community, like I went to a party, I was like, oh, like these people are cool. Like when I was in middle school. And then we'd be at the party, they're like, oh, you don't know this song, or you don't know about this, or you never tasted this. And it was like things about the culture I didn't know. So I feel like I wasn't fully into any of them. Yeah. So that's why I was more like I don't know.
I experienced a little bit of that when I first got back to the United States. As you may know, Chris, I grew up in Trinidad. And when I came back when I was around 19 years old, there were certain things that the black community took for granted that I had no idea anything about. And my wife and I joke about the fact that people were making a mixtape. This is back in the days when people actually recorded music on a cassette. And there was a particular song that everybody was putting on this mixtape. It was like the best slow jams, right? And everybody was putting on this song called Always and Forever. I had never heard of Always and Forever. And people looked at me and was like, how can you be black and never hear of Always and Forever? But I had a different experience. And in that moment, I felt like I wasn't black enough. And it was just really interesting how that gets played out. Mm-hmm. So tell me, how you grew up and what your identity was growing up, did that play in any way or form or fashion with you choosing to come to Manhattan College?
It did, because like a lot of people don't think I'm very religious, but I don't know, I really believe in like God, and I wouldn't say Catholic, but I believe in a lot of those values, and that's how I grew up. And I had a really amazing teacher in high school who really taught me how to view like religion differently and like what it is for you. So, like, don't take everything literally that's in the book. Like, take the message, like, read in between the lines. Mm-hmm. And, like, she gave this example, like, there's nothing in the Bible about driving a car because the world changes. So you just take the message about, like, I know it sounds extreme, but, like, don't go around running people over with cars because that's, like, the message in the Bible. So just take that out of that, take religion, take the good parts of it and, like, what it applies to you. So I was like, I want to go to a school that's somewhat Catholic, has some type of values, that's small. I didn't want a big school. I wanted, like, a medium or small school, so I can get to know people, but the school being LaSallian did play a role since I was so used to being in a Catholic school, I guess.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you went to Catholic high school as well?
I went to Catholic elementary school, then I switched over for middle school, and then I went back to Catholic for high school. Okay. Yeah.
That's good. So now that you're here at Manhattan College, how do you see that playing out? How do you see multiculturalism manifesting itself here at Manhattan College?
I feel like when I see multiculturalism manifesting here is like simple things. Like when I go into the library and there's like this person and this other person who are completely from different places of the world. When I see transfer students from like France studying with like someone who goes to the Heights that I've known like my whole life, I feel like that's when I see multiculturalism here.
And what's your part in it? How has it affected you directly?
I feel like directly I do a lot of like educating people. Like I feel like I'm just an example. Like everyone does. Like if you come from another country, I feel like there's a lot of things in media. Like even if I went somewhere like to India, I feel like it wouldn't be exactly how I think it is, what I see in movies. So like when somebody comes over here and they're from another country, or like from not even another country, another state, they're like, oh, like I've never seen anyone who's like dark and like speaks Spanish like so fluently or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, like that's real. Like it's not like what you see on Instagram. Like these are all like Dominican people. They all look like this. I know we have certain features that like mostly like certain people have, but we're not all like that. There's like everyone's diverse, I guess, in their own way.
And you take an active part too. You teach classes, right? You take part in teaching some of the salsa classes.
Oh yeah, I do. I'll go to the salsa class. And then people will be there. They'll ask me, they're like, oh, like you didn't salsa so well. I'm like, yeah, it's part of my culture. And they're like, oh, what culture? I'm like, yeah, I'm Dominican. That's like my parents are like amazing at it. So it's just like little things like that. One time I was stepping on the quad because I came from high school and it was like, we were in the Bronx and it was like stepping was big and that was like something I really got into. And I was teaching my friend on the quad one day and it was this summer and they're like, oh, like what is that? What is stepping? They're like, oh, is that drumming? And I was just like letting them know like that's like a big part of like a culture, like a whole side of it you don't even know about.
Right, absolutely. Well, good. Okay, well, Chris, thank you so much for spending some time with me, and we look forward to working with you much more in the Multicultural Center.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, bye.
Bye.
Time to take a break. If you're looking for something to do, we've got a bunch of stuff coming out of the Multicultural Center. Our program, In the Media Mondays, is looking at Latino stereotypes in the media. Join us on October 16th at 4:30 in the Multicultural Center. All are welcome. Every Tuesday at 5:30 to 6:30 in the mini gym, we have breakdancing. The breakdance experience happens every single week and is hosted by our very own Hunter. No reservation or signups are required. Just show up and get ready to sweat. Trivia Bowl is on November 30th. Signups are now open. Go to tinyurl.com MC Trivia FA17. That's tinyurl.com/MC Trivia FA17. Prizes are great. The fun is even greater. Make sure you sign up now. Now back to our podcast. Over 50% of the campus at Manhattan College lives in the residence halls. There are always great stories that come out of these places that people live and sleep and engage. We're looking at some of those stories for the multicultural aspect of it, but sometimes it's just funny. Enjoy. So we're sitting with R.A. Nate. I think everybody calls you R.A. Nate now. It's like
that's
nobody,
how it goes.
yeah, nobody ever calls you just Nate anymore.
Nope, no. I have a title now.
You have a title. Great. So this segment is called In the Halls, and what we try to do is really focus on some of the ways that multiculturalism is showing itself in the halls, in the residence halls. We have about 54, 53% of our campus who live in the residence halls, and we want to hear those stories.
Oh, I didn't even know that it was that high. That's good.
Yeah, it's pretty high. So what I heard that you had a program that you were running, that you ran a couple of weeks ago. And by heard, I mean I helped to facilitate
yeah,
it.
you were there.
Yeah, I was there. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to run this program, and then let's see and how it fleshed out.
So I'm a big fan of multiculturalism. I believe that everyone is multicultural. Unfortunately, getting people to believe that they are multicultural and be respectful and inclusive of other identities is not always that simple. And in the residence halls and actually in daily life, you find that the dominant identities have a very difficult time acknowledging and being accepting of others. Um, Casually throwing around phrases that are derogatory or that are offensive. And I don't like it. And if you don't like something, you do something about it.
That's a good attitude to have. And we had this a little bit of those discussions when we did RA training, which you were part of in the summertime. All right, so knowing that this existed on the halls or existed in your experiences in the halls, what did you set out to do? How'd you figure out a way to do something about it?
All right, so basically, you're the point guy. So anything having to do with multiculturalism or identities or inclusion and things like that, you're gonna be the fail-safe on campus. So obviously, I reached out, and the point of the program was to get everybody thinking of the ways that they are multicultural and the ways that they can connect to their neighbor that they probably didn't see prior, but would be able to appreciate after.
And we are actually working on a program called We Are All Multicultural with the Halo Project. And so those pictures are now being circulated around. So it comes at a really interesting and good time.
Yeah, perfect.
So let's talk about the actual event. What do you think? How do you think the event went?
All right, well, first, the name of the event was This Is My Campus Too. And I wanted it to primarily focus on the marginalized identities on campus, the more vulnerable ones, the ones that don't really get spoken for initially. I think it was highly successful. Everyone that attended the event definitely left home with a few gems in their pocket. And actually, after you left, I knew you had to get home. We hung out for another 20, 30 minutes or so while we cleaned up, and we just chatted about different things that were covered in the program and different ways that people will be seeking to get together with people with other identities.
That's excellent. One of the greatest things about doing any program is when people stick around after the program is over.
Exactly. That's how you know you made an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. One of those things, if everybody's getting their stuff and running out the door, I was like, oh, well, maybe this wasn't as impactful as I thought it was.
Exactly.
So it was good to hear that like there were people sticking around afterwards. I posted something to my Facebook after I had left, and it's one of the greatest things that a presenter can hear, and it was that somebody said, "I wasn't going to come, but I'm glad that I did. I needed to hear this."
Exactly.
And that's impactful and that's powerful, not just for the presenter but for the the person who's hearing that.
And the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's funny is normally at these kinds of events, the people that are there are the people that don't need to hear it.
Correct.
We got a couple of people that were in the room that this was their first time having these kinds of conversations, and I think it really resonated. I think they're going to take it home. I think they're carry it around with them on campus, and they will be the example that we're trying to set here.
Sweet. Well, it's good to hear that you're still working on these things, and that you are an agent for change in the residence halls. And
Absolutely.
we want to keep these stories coming. So if you hear about some more ways that multiculturalism is showing itself on the halls, come talk to us.
Absolutely.
Whether it's somebody sharing their food or doing a dance party in the middle of the night with some music that people may not be familiar with. We want to hear all of those stories. And we want to keep up with the way that multiculturalism and diversity and inclusivity and equity is showing itself in the residence halls. So again, thank you so much, R.A. Nate. And we'll be sure to be seeing you around in multicultural.
Absolutely, you were a huge hit, and I don't think they're going to let you get away with just doing one program.
So oh wow! Okay,
we'll see you soon.
And I'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Nate.
All right, have a good one.
Bye. Now it's time for some humor. Here's our joke of the week.
Hello there, my name is Alexander Nieves, and this is my joke. So there were these two fish in a tank, and then one fish says to the other, "Hey, how do you drive this thing?"
Well done, Alex.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for this week. Special thanks to Chris Santiago, Alex Nieves, Nate Garcia, and music has been provided by Ben Sounds. Our theme song comes from Steven Cerulli. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Tune in next week as we listen to more stories about multiculturalism and people's journeys, listen to more jokes, figure out what people have put onto their halos, and get more information all about the different parts of Manhattan College. This has been the FrankenCast. If you have any questions for us, send us an email at frankencast@manhattan.edu. That's FrankenCast @manhattan.edu.